just a little bit to define what we mean by the supply chain, and many of you know this. It's a network of interconnected organizations to ensure availability of health products to the people who need them. And there are multiple players in the supply chain. Everyone is familiar with them. The two I want to point out that may be overlooked very often are right at the bottom. Community health workers, increasingly they're becoming a very important part of supply chains. And then also the private sector. Even while we talk about a public health supply chain, the private sector plays a very big role and can play a very effective role in ensuring an effective supply chain. And when we talk about 3PLs, we mean third-party providers, so if you're outsourcing distribution or anything like that, and even private healthcare outlets. The other point I want to make is that supply chains are constantly evolving, they are dynamic, and increasingly, given the environments, supply chains must modernize to respond to increasing demands for accountability and sustainability. In many of the countries I've worked in, the public sector supply chains are somewhere between ad hoc and organized. And what I'm here to talk about today is sort of the ultimate goal, which is integration within a supply chain. So what do we mean by supply chain integration? And one of the things we'd like to do today is talk about how we have borrowed examples from the commercial sector who have really looked at supply chain as a way to radically transform the way they do operations. Obviously, when we're talking about public sectors, not all the lessons apply, but there are some very tangible concepts that are applicable and can really improve the way we do things. So companies such as Apple, Procter & Gamble, Walmart undertook deliberate efforts to improve the coordination, the visibility, and alignment across different business units to build integrated supply chains. And it's really transformed the way they operate their supply chains. And we believe it has the potential to do the same in the public sector. And I'll share some examples of how we've included this. But just to talk about IBM as a specific example, everyone is familiar with IBM, which is why I put it up here. Hopefully everyone is familiar with IBM. And what they did when they began their transformation is that first it was a need that was identified at the leadership level. They then created integrated supply chain as a core strategic business unit, meaning it became a priority and a central function within the organizations. And then they aligned everything to fit with that. So their measurement systems were designed to capture data across that. They prioritized supply chains within the company and aligned every supply chain unit behind a common goal. And really oriented or reoriented their supply chain to focus on the clients rather than on specific processes. So as you can see in terms of their outcomes cut across all areas of success within the organization. So, from a commercial point of view, obviously the productivity went up and they generated profit as well as cost savings, but also they focused on measuring customer service, and that went up as well. One other thing to point out. It did take a long time, 93 to 2005, and I think it's still ongoing. When we talk about the public health supply chain and integration within that, we talk about an integrated supply chain as linking people's activities, information along the chain into a cohesive whole. And I think the word cohesive is really what we're looking at. I think some things that plague many public sector supply chains is the fragmentation and that everyone deals with. The one thing I sort of want to point out is that you can have separate product streams, but they all need to be aligned and come together as a whole. So what do we mean by that? I think one of the things, for those of us who have worked in public sector supply chains, we hear a lot about integrating across vertical supply chains. So you get the family planning supply chain, the HIV supply chain, you get essential medicines. And many people, it's not a new term to when you hear people talk about integration, the common definition is to think, well, we need to merge all of these together. And I think it's really important to consider that as a first step. You do have to think about how you can improve efficiency by not having, 5 different trucks going out, one delivering family planning, one delivering HIV, all of those. There is room for efficiency in that kind of horizontal integration. I think the point, based on our experience, and definitely that of the commercial sector, is that is not enough to improve the customer service, and it's not enough to make sure you get products to where they're needed. What you have to do is also think about integrating the supply chain from top to bottom. Because vaccines don't have the same requirements as condoms. And you have to factor that in when you're thinking through supply chain integration. Because if you don't, that can actually compromise on your product availability. So what are the characteristics of an integrated public health supply chain? And really they can be sort of boiled down to 6 key attributes. As you can see, this is very little to do with any kind of product and much more about the orientation of how we build and strengthen supply chains. So obviously there's clarity of roles and responsibilities, there are streamlined processes, logistics information is visible and it's available for decision makers to use. Your supply chain is agile, which means if there's any changes to the system, it can respond quickly to those. There's trust and collaboration, which means the community health worker understands that the health center who resupplies them is there to help them get the products. We're not competing for the same products. We're really collaborating together. And then everyone's objectives are aligned, which means the focus is really on making sure that the customers always have products. You always have products when they're needed. So I'm going to quickly share 3 examples from the 3 different continents we work in to show how we've used these different characteristics and integrated them into some of the solutions. So in Zimbabwe, we really looked at streamlining processes as a way to improve product availability. I think many people are familiar with the challenges in the environment in Zimbabwe, economic fuel crises, fuel shortages. So the USA Deliver Project and its partners funded by DFID and USAID, created the delivery topping up system, which is essentially adapting a vendor-managed inventory approach from the commercial sector. And what it does is a truck goes out with health workers on it and products. And they go down to the health facility, look at what the needs are, and deliver on the spot. It had a lot of impact in streamlining ordering and reporting processes, because before, getting the information up was very difficult, and there was a chronic mismatch between what was needed and what was delivered. And the health personnel were freed from spending time on those kind of administrative tasks and could spend more time with clients. So just as an example, the stockout rates for nevirapine decreased significantly and are now down to 2%. In fact, they're less than 2% right now. The cost of managing the system were reduced and customer satisfaction is improved. It is an integrated system, so condoms are also managed through the same process. Condoms are family planning products. I just used nevirapine as an example. In Bangladesh, we used a different approach where we focused on data visibility.